It's December 13th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with South Korea and the Netherlands pledge for chip alliance. The Netherlands, a leading chip-making equipment firm ASML, says it will enhance business collaboration with South Korean firms, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. The deal was announced during President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to the Dutch firm on Tuesday. A UN General Assembly resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza passes with the support of more than 150 countries. U.S. President Joe Biden says Israel is starting to lose support due to the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. The United States has imposed sanctions on Russian shipping firms for their involvement in arms deal between Moscow and Pyongyang, as well as on more than 250 individuals and entities for aiding Russia's war efforts against Ukraine, including a South Korean national for the first time. President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit to the Netherlands is now in full swing, with a state banquet hosted by the king on his first full day in Amsterdam. There, he shed a light on the 6 decades of relations between the two nations. Our Kim Do-yeon searches off this morning.
At the first state banquet for a South Korean president at the Royal Palace of Amsterdam on Tuesday, President Yoon Suk-yeol gave a special shout-out to the Dutchman that brought a special moment to all Koreans in recent history.
2002년 대한민국 국민들의 가슴을 뜨겁게 달군 월드컵 4강 신화의 중심에는 네덜란드 출신의 명장 거스 히딩크 감독이 계십니다. 어디 계십니까?
This was his way of showing that South Korea and the Netherlands share a deep relationship that goes beyond semiconductor cooperation. The diplomatic relationship was established more than 60 years ago, and the two countries last year upgraded the relationship to a strategic partnership. Also, he reminded everyone that the first Westerner to become naturalized to what at the time was the Joseon dynasty was a Dutchman, Jan Jans Beltevre, or in Korean, Pak Yeon. King Willem-Alexander also noted that South Korea has grown tremendously in just a couple of years, and Koreans and the Dutch are culturally connected.
The Republic of Korea is everywhere. There's K-pop on the radio, K-movies in the cinema, K-dramas on Netflix, and K-food in the supermarket.
Above all, the two leaders underscore the shared values that the two countries are based on, something that has become increasingly important with uncertainties around the world.
국제법 질서를 발전시켜야 할 의무를 헌법에 규정한 네덜란드야말로 규범 기반 국제 질서를 선도하고 있는 것입니다. 대한민국도 세계의 자유, 평화, 번영을 위해 책임과 기여를 다하는 글로벌 중추 국가로서 규범 기반 국제 질서의 강화에 힘을 쏟고 있습니다.
This comes as President Yoon started official engagements for the state visit on Tuesday at the welcoming ceremony at Dam Square in Amsterdam, which included a 21-gun salute and a greeting from Korean children. After heading inside the palace, the president and the Dutch king introduced their delegations, including Prime Minister Mark Rutte. Prime Minister Rutte, according to President Yoon himself, is one of the leaders most close to him on the global scene. And Yoon was accompanied by Rutte as he went to lay a wreath at the National Monument at the dam to commemorate the Dutch war heroes. There, President Yoon thanked the king for his hospitality, saying his state visit to South Korea in 2014, a first for a Dutch king, boosted the bilateral relationship back then, and his visit to the Netherlands is another milestone. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, the focus of President Yoon's state visit to the Netherlands is all about semiconductor cooperation between Seoul and Amsterdam. Surely enough, the first day of his official visit included a tour to a Dutch chip equipment firm where hundreds of millions of dollars in joint investments were inked. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
South Korean and Dutch chip giants will jointly invest over $700 million to foster next-generation semiconductor technology and young specialists, as President Yoon aims to solidify a semiconductor alliance with the Netherlands. On Tuesday, the South Korean leader visited the production facility of ASML, the world's biggest supplier of lithography machines, crucial for making semiconductors. Accompanied by Dutch King Willem-Alexander and the heads of Samsung and SK Hynix, Lee Jae-yong and Chae Tae-won, Yoon oversaw the signing of 3 memorandums of understanding on developing cutting-edge microchips, which make up almost 20% of South Korea's exports.
ASML이 만들어낸 반도체 산업의 혁신은 인공지능, 5G, 모빌리티 등 4차 산업혁명의 강력한 동력이 되고 있습니다. 앞으로 한국 기업들과 긴밀히 협력해서 반도체 산업의 혁신과 글로벌 공급망 안정화를 위해 노력해 주시기를 기대합니다.
Samsung and ASML agreed to jointly invest some $763 million into an R&D center based in South Korea to develop ultrafine processing technology based on next-generation extreme ultraviolet or EUV lithography. Meanwhile, SK Hynix also signed a deal with ASML to co-develop hydrogen recovery technology for EUVs, recycling rather than burning hydrogen to use as process gas. This is expected to reduce power usage by around 20% and save $12.5 billion in costs annually. Another MOU was reached between the Korean and Dutch governments to establish a chip academy for graduate students beginning in February, involving the two nations' top chip-related firms and institutions, including Samsung and ASML, to offer practical training with cutting-edge equipment and facilities.
Growing talent together and sharing know-how is something that only a true semiconductor alliance can do, and we expect that exchanges between future generations in the industry will become more active.
Yoon's economic secretary noted that the deals were inked as global foundries like Samsung, TSMC and Intel scramble to master the production of ultrafine 2nm chips, around 10 to 15 times faster than 3nm models, which were first mass-produced last year by Samsung. As their rivalry intensifies, he noted that the president toured ASML's cleanroom facility, featuring an advanced lithography machine which has never been shown publicly before. This, he said, casts optimistic prospects for South Korean firms looking to secure key materials and equipment to boost their chip-making capacity. Celebrating the budding cooperation, the South Korean leader and the Dutch king both signed a semiconductor wafer for display at the cleanroom facility.
President Yoon will further discuss strengthening bilateral chip cooperation with Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte when they meet at The Hague on Wednesday. 오수영, Arirang News, Amsterdam.
As he said himself, President Yoon's deep visit is all about semiconductors and fortifying a chip alliance with the Netherlands. Now, will the newly inked deals between the two governments and firms be a ladder for South Korea to lead the global chip race? Let's turn to Professor Yang Yidong this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, good morning.
Professor Yang, President Yoon checked out ASML's heavily controlled so-called clean room manufacturing facilities. That made him the first foreign leader to do that. Now, that speaks a lot about how seriously Yoon is taking the chip-related issues, right?
That's true. Well, two countries have announced that they're going to organize a chip alliance. And this room, clean room, is a very, very delicate and very sensitive facility that may impact on the yield rate of very sensitive semiconductors. And besides, ASML dominates this the extreme ultraviolet, the lithography equipment. And this is the first time for ASML to expose that the clean room to any people, particularly the foreigners. So I should say that this is a great gesture, political gesture, that signifies the very intensive relationship and trust between two countries.
Right, then what does it say about the chip giant actually allowing a foreign leader to have a tour of what is a very private zone, like you said? The ASML must be seeing Seoul as a great partner in the field of chips, right?
Yes, first of all, we should remember that Samsung had invested in this company, ASML, about 11 years ago with about $300 million. Even though something like trend has decreased in investment by selling the stocks from 3% to 0.4%. But the ASML has maintained a great relationship with Korea, particularly with the Samsung. And I do believe that Samsung is one of the major triggers for the boost and growth of ASML. So that is one of the reasons why ASML has allowed our president to visit the clean room. And besides, I mean, Korea is a very desperate situation in terms of economic growth, and also the same as for the Samsung, because Korea has observed about 8% decrease in their export this year, and Samsung Electronics may have about a 12% decrease in their overall sales revenue. So both the Korean government and Samsung Electronics, of course, same for the SK Hynix, they need to make some very tipping point to make changes in the overall economic situations, the countrywide and also the company-wide.
It's all about, in a nutshell, acquiring technology from the Dutch firm. Some experts are saying that the success of South Korea's foundry industry depends on how quickly and how much it secures extreme ultraviolet lithography from ASML. Now, what's your take on this, Professor Yang?
Well, we should remember a couple of things here. First of all, the semiconductor is the largest export sector in Korean economy. It takes about 20% of our overall $600 billion export. And besides, the semiconductor is the largest portion for Samsung Electronics, the annual revenue. They take care of about 1/3. The problem with the semiconductor industry is this year, this industry has shrunk over 10% due to decrease in the electronic equipment and also high interest rate that may suppress overall demand in economic activities. So the current government and Samsung Electronics need to make some, the tipping point to boost up their growth. And if you point to the Samsung Electronics is really struggling with the non-memory semiconductors. We should remember that the overall semiconductor market amounts to about $600 billion. And 75% of semiconductors is about the non-memory, such as CPU and GPU market. And TSMC is taking up the primary position with a market share about 54%. And Samsung Electronics is taking up as a second with a market share about 12.5%. The problem is the market share gap is getting bigger this year. Mm-hmm. And there are only two companies who can produce semiconductors with 3 nanometer technology at the moment. But within a couple of years, TSMC and Samsung Electronics announced to produce their semiconductors with 2 nanometer technologies. And this company, ASML, is the only company who can produce the extreme ultraviolet technologies, lithography, that may help produce semiconductor products with the 2 nanometer technologies. That's why Samsung Electronics is really, desperate to improve their relationship with the ASML.
Definitely, the EUV is the key of this entire trip. Then, other than obtaining the advanced technology like EUV from ASML, Professor Yang, what remaining hurdles maybe are there for South Korean firms, including SK and Samsung, to steal back and also maintain the #1 spot in the global chip race? What do you think?
Well, I explained that about 75% of the semiconductor market is related to non-memory semiconductors. Well, the current market share in the overall non-memory semiconductor is taking only 3.3%, which is 1/3 of Japan and about half of China. Well, as I explained, that the foundry which is producing semiconductor sector, Samsung Electronics is taking about 12.5%. But if you expand the perspective to overall non-memory semiconductor market, our market share is just shrunk to 3.3. That means we need to expand our coverage of activities in the non-memory semiconductor market, such as fabless, which is about the designing the overall structure of semiconductors, and also design how that translate the design into manufacturing terms, etc. So there are many sectors and activities that we need to expand, not just only for Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, but we need to encourage many other the semiconductor companies to expand into other areas of non-memory semiconductor industry.
All right, Professor Yang, thank you so much for your thorough explanation this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you, too. Have a good day.
U.S. President Joe Biden says Israel is losing global support over its continuous bombing of Gaza, showing a new rift in relations with Tel Aviv. While the UN General Assembly on Tuesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of an immediate Gaza ceasefire. Lee Seung-ja has more.
U.S. President Joe Biden has warned Israel that it's losing global support over its indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. He also called on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to change his way of dealing with the armed conflict, showing a new rift in his relationship with the Israeli leader. Speaking to Democratic donors in Washington on Tuesday, Biden voiced criticism of Israel's hardline government, calling Netanyahu's government the most conservative government in Israel's history. The Israeli Prime Minister admitted Tuesday that there is a disagreement with Biden regarding what he referred to as the post-Hamas Gaza Strip, but expressed hope that the two sides could reach an agreement. Netanyahu is against Biden's idea to allow the Palestinian Authority to govern the Gaza Strip following the end of the armed conflict, while the U.S. leader also pushing for a two-state solution. Netanyahu argues that Israel doesn't want to see a repeat of the Oslo Accords with the Palestinians in the 1990s, a deal that included a limited right to self-determination in Gaza and the West Bank. The chief of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Philippe Lazzarini, visited Gaza on Tuesday to examine the humanitarian situation in the region. Describing the visit, he said it was hell on earth and called for an immediate ceasefire. Meanwhile, Reuters reported Tuesday that there are 135 hostages still being held captive by Hamas. According to the Israeli government, of the 135 held captive, 19 are presumed to have been killed. The UN General Assembly on Tuesday voted to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the armed conflict. A majority of 153 nations voted in favor of a ceasefire resolution in the General Assembly's emergency special session, while 10 voted against and 23 abstained. The non-binding resolution calls for a ceasefire for all parties to comply with international law and for humanitarian access to hostages, as well as their immediate and unconditional release. Lee Seung-ja, Arirang News.
Even at this hour, countries at COP28 are struggling to narrow their opinions on this year's summit statement, to the point where the UN Climate Change Conference has gone deep into overtime. Our Choi Soo-hyung with the latest.
The 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, which was supposed to close on Tuesday local time, has been extended as the participating countries could not reach an agreement. It's because a new draft released on Monday excluded the key phrase, phase out of fossil fuels.
It's important that we have the right language when it comes to fossil fuels. It's important that we think about how we get that balance.
The agreement fell because major oil-producing countries, including Saudi Arabia, opposed the words phase out. The Secretary-General of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries urged its 13 member countries to resist fossil fuel withdrawal. But over 100 countries, including the European Union and Australia, as well as many environmental organizations and even small island nations, some of the most vulnerable places in the world of rising temperatures and seas, blasted the draft for lacking the words phase out.
And yes, there are a couple of good things in there, but overall it is clearly insufficient and not adequate to addressing the problem we are here to address.
However, some developing countries also insisted that their countries should not be stopped by the contents of the statement.
My country is a developing country. It's landlocked. It's still, exploiting natural resources for the economic development, for livelihood improvement, for job creation and so forth.
2 years ago, the conference participants agreed to gradual reduction limited to coal, but failed to expand that to all fossil fuels last year. The summit's Director General said the countries need to come back to the objective of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and reducing global emissions by 43%. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Russian companies associated with Moscow's arms transfers from North Korea. In its new Russia sanctions package over its war in Ukraine, the U.S. State Department announcement on Tuesday included 3 companies involved in the export of North Korean military goods. The firms named were shipping firm Ibex, Asia Shipping Holdings, and Asia Shipping Company. South Korea, U.S. believe North Korea in exchange presumed to have acquired space technology that was used in its military reconnaissance satellite launch. Also on Tuesday, the Treasury Department imposed sanctions on more than 150 individuals and entities linked to Russia's Ukraine war. That includes a South Korean national surnamed Lee, an alleged key procurement agent for AK Microtech, which is a Russia-based firm transferring foreign semiconductor technology to Moscow.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Pakistan, where a suicide bomber attacked a police compound in the country's northwest city of Dera Ismail Khan, killing at least 23 and injuring 32. Militant group Tehreek-e-Jihad Pakistan, affiliated to the Pakistani Taliban, claimed responsibility for Tuesday's car bomb attack, saying it was targeting officers at the police compound, which was being used as a base camp for the Pakistani army. The Pakistani army said an hours-long shootout ensued between its security forces and the militants. The statement also said a total of 27 militants were killed after overnight military operations in the area. The Daraban police station is located near Pakistan's border with Afghanistan. Now, a UN agency report released on Tuesday showed that Myanmar is once again the world's biggest opium producer, topping Afghanistan, where the ruling Taliban banned opium production. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes report said that between 2022 and 2023, Myanmar, torn apart by civil war, had an 18% increase in the land used for farming of opium to over 47,000 hectares. The opiate economy in Myanmar is estimated to be worth up to $2.5 billion in 2022, amounting for around 4% of the country's GDP. UNODC reported last month that the Taliban's ban on opium production led to a 95% drop there. Myanmar has seen turmoil and fighting since the military coup d'etat in February 2021. Now moving over to Turkey, where the president of Turkish Super League side MKE Ankaragücü, Faruk Koza, was arrested on Tuesday for punching a referee at the end of a match the day before. Koza's team drew with Rizespor on Monday evening after conceding a 97th-minute equalizer, prompting him to enter the pitch and physically assault referee Halil Umut Meler. In response, the chairman of the Turkish Football Association announced an indefinite suspension of all league matches, calling the attack a night of shame for Turkish football. The match official suffered a minor fracture after taking several more blows from others as he lay on the pitch. Now, as our last story, in Bolivia, where 12,000 baby turtles have been released into River Itenes, a tributary of the Amazon, on Monday in an effort by the local government to repopulate the river with endangered Amazon turtle. The newly hatched turtles found a new home on the border between Bolivia and Brazil. The Amazon turtle's population has been decreasing due to loss of habitat and illegal fishing, as well as the trade of turtle eggs for human consumption. This program in Bolivia has released hundreds of thousands of turtles since it began, and the local communities have developed ecotourism around the turtles.
Good morning. It's absolutely abnormal to be this warm around this time, even after Daeseol on the seasonal calendar. The warming trend continues today with warmer highs than yesterday under cloudier skies. Through Friday, we'll have temperatures that are much warmer than norms. Then an extreme cold snap awaits us this weekend, rapidly going down to minus 11 degrees Celsius by Sunday morning in Seoul. It's a foggy start for some of the southern provinces this morning. Afternoon highs will be 2 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. Seoul tops out at 12, Daejeon, Daegu at 14 degrees this afternoon under cloudy skies with decent air quality nationwide. Rain is in the forecast tomorrow starting from Jeollado and Jeju, spreading nationwide by the afternoon, and that rain will continue into Friday. Then freezing air grips much of Korea, and we won't see highs above the freezing mark for a while in the capital area. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.